You're listening to Saturday Morning Media. And now, back to our show. I have a lot of really cool friends who do a lot of really cool things. I wanted to make it a goal to sit down with these friends and spend about 15 minutes or so getting to know them better and find out about their past, present, and their future. The result is this show. My name is Grant Baciocco, and this is 15 Minutes With. Rob Paravonian is a comedy musician and a songwriter, and he is today's guest on 15 Minutes With. Rob, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Oh, absolutely. My pleasure. We have been friends for a long time, and I'm excited to get to talk to you a little bit about your creative career and your creative process. Where did you grow up?
I grew up in Waukegan, Illinois, which is north of Chicago on Lake Michigan, just about the halfway point between Chicago and Milwaukee.
Mm-hmm.
A beautiful little industrial town. Actually, it's also the hometown of fellow comedians and musician Jack Benny.
Oh, wow. So you're following in the comedy footsteps of Jack Benny.
Yeah, which, not bad. He was quite the successful one. So, yeah, there's a junior high or middle school, as they call them now, in Waukegan, Illinois, called Jack Benny Junior High or Jack Benny Middle School that they named after him, and he apparently got a big kick out of it. He was retired. I think they named it in the late 60s or early 70s, but he got a big kick out of the fact that there was a school named after him.
Named after him.
In the hometown.
Yeah. And growing up, what was the first kind of creative thing that captured your interest?
The first creative thing that I did myself, or just something creative that existed that I liked, or
both? You can answer both questions. That's great.
Okay. Well, I'm the youngest of three kids. So I had two older sisters who did music, so they were starting on musical things, as I was really young. And my dad also did community theater. He actually studied acting when he was in college. He was a teacher. He was a middle school teacher by day, but he also did like community theater. So I do remember going to see plays when I was very young, like musicals and plays. And I remember being backstage, and I must have been tiny, but going back and seeing, the backstage world of the actors and the costumes and everything, and being sort of fascinated with it. So I remember I was exposed to it at a young age, and then I started doing music myself. I think I started taking cello lessons at the age of 7 or 8, and I started. I always wrote like little short stories and stuff. When I was a kid, I think I even wrote a really bad. Well, of course it was bad. I was 8, but it was I wrote like a sci-fi script, which was basically an 8-minute. Or 8-page summary of Star Wars, but I just changed all the names. But I really just wanted to play with the typewriter, and I thought, I'll write a space movie, and it was basically Star Wars with different names.
And did you ever film it, or was it just you just wrote the script?
Oh no, I just wrote it. I had, I'm a little bit on the older side. I'm in my 40s, so we had like an 8mm silent movie camera, but we didn't have like a video camera, and it was not. You couldn't make or edit videos as easily then as you can now. Like,
right.
Now you can shoot stuff on your phone, which is amazing. But yeah, at the time, so I dreamt of making it, but yeah, never even. Yeah, no, that got shut down in before principal photography.
Well, I wanted to talk about the cello because you started at such a young age. Was that your decision to take cello, or was that just because your older siblings were doing it?
Well, it was my decision, and my parents never let me forget that it was my decision to start playing the cello. Anytime I didn't want to practice, they're like, you wanted to play this. But, I wanted to play something, and I think it was sort of expected, in the family that, you learn something. And I never felt any pressure from my parents to start anything, but I kind of wanted to do something. And it was a music program through the school, which was great. I was in a public school, and they had a music program, and the head of the grade school music string program went around to all the classes, and she would play, a little bit of the violin, play a little bit of the viola, play a little bit of the cello, just to show the kids what all the instruments were that were, available or possible. And I heard the cello, and I really liked it. And she said, not a lot of people played it, which for some reason appealed to me, because I thought I'd be more special if I played the cello. But I also really liked the lower tone. I didn't like the violins were always too high and screechy for me, so I heard the cello and I was like, oh, that's what I want to play. So it was my choice to start, and I played it all through grade school and up through high school. I peaked probably in the 8th grade. That was probably the apex of my cello skills.
And were you, I mean, I assume you were playing like in the school bands or the orchestra?
Yeah. They had a grade school orchestra that was up through 8th grade, and then there was a high school orchestra. So I played in all of those. And I think 8th grade I was first chair cello in the grade school orchestra. And I never got to such lofty heights in the high school orchestra, but in junior high, I also started playing bass guitar and started playing in bands and stuff. So my musical attention started going toward rock music and bass guitar. So my cello skills sort of plateaued right around there.
Are there similarities between cello and bass guitar? Like, was it an easy transition?
I think so, in that, they're both stringed instruments, obviously, and so I at least had the physical or the dexterity was sort of built up, and my left hand was sort of used to pressing down strings, so I at least didn't have to start from scratch on that aspect. And then the ear training, because they taught the Suzuki method, which is all about learning music by ear. So that definitely helped in picking up the bass. And it was actually an orchestra conductor for the summer music program, but I think between 7th and 8th grade, or between 6th and 7th grade, she was the one who sort of encouraged, or at least put the idea in my head that bass was a transition I could make, because there was a picture of her playing in an adult orchestra, and she was playing upright bass, even though she was a cellist. And I asked her about that, and she said, "Oh yeah, they're pretty similar. A lot of cellists double on upright bass." And then she said, "If you learn upright bass, it's the same strings as an electric bass." And so yeah, that was just like my eyes lit up. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is almost like cello skills can apply to something that could actually be considered cool. It's like I never thought that was possible in a million years, So yeah, there was definitely, I felt like when I started picking up bass, I had a good foundation and a good head start.
And did you play music like sort of outside school? Like, were you in a band or something?
Yeah, I did. Let's see, in junior high, there was a guy, I was in a church group, and one of the guys there was a drummer, and we would put together various different groups, sometimes just the two of us, sometimes with a guitar player. I think for one Boy Scout event that one of the parents put together a jazz band that I played bass for, because it was some other troupe, but they had some horn players, so that was kind of cool. Well, I thought it was cool when I was 12, but and then in high school, yeah, I always had at least one band going on, or trying to keep a band together or get a band together.
And were you playing covers, or were you playing original? Like, were you writing originals?
Started with covers, and then I think it wasn't until maybe my freshman year of college that I really started playing in a band that was concentrating on originals. We played mostly like rock covers, so a lot of oldies like 50s, 60s covers, and some newer stuff. But then by college, the band that I was in that I continued to play in after college, we did mostly originals. So it started as covers, and then we started working on our own stuff. And
were you writing songs during that time?
Yeah, I wrote for the band that I was in, the Stepping Stones, which was our name. It was a guitar player, a drummer, and me. I played bass, and the guitar player and I each wrote songs. So about half the songs were his, about half the songs were mine in that group. And
now you kind of are known for doing funny songs. Were they funny, or did they have humor, or was it more just like we're a serious rock band?
Well, we were never super serious. Like, we weren't like dour and sad like an emo band, but we were serious about it. My lyrics tended to be kind of on the quirkier or funny side. They weren't necessarily, like laugh out loud lyrics, like the kind of lyrics I would write for my comedy sets. But they definitely, there were definitely some songs that had the lyrics on the quirkier side. I had one song called "I Don't Have the Time," which was just all about being stuck in different kinds of lines, and that was a fun one. And it, people would laugh at it. So it was definitely in that direction.
And the kind of genesis to going into strictly comedy, or not strictly, but into full-on comedy music. How did that happen? How did you get that idea to do full-on comedy?
Well, I started going to stand-up open mics when I was in college. I actually went to college at USC out there in LA, and I was in a stand-up contest on campus just because I heard there was a contest, and I never really thought I would, or I never planned on doing stand-up, or I more accurately, I didn't realize it was something I wanted to do until I heard there was a contest on campus and that students were allowed to get up and do stand-up. So I did that, and let's see, that was my sophomore year. I did really badly because I found out about the contest that afternoon, and I had like 4 hours that I was trying to write material, and I didn't write anything. I had all these like ideas, but no actual finished jokes. So I didn't do it again until the next year the contest came around, but I had for that contest I had time to write some stuff, and it worked out pretty well, and I started going to the open mics in LA. So I started for the first year I was going to comedy open mics. I did just regular stand-up without the guitar.
Right.
And then I think I might have just had a couple of weeks where I was burnt out on the material I was working on, and I had a couple ideas for funny songs, and I did those instead, and it went over really well, and it just seemed like a natural fit because I had played music so my whole life. So yeah, I think I became much more natural on stage when I was doing music in the comedy world instead of just standing there talking. So for me, it turned out to be a natural thing, but I didn't go into comedy realizing that that's where it was going to end up, or at least not that first year.
Yeah, I wonder if you kind of discovered the same thing I discovered when I was doing comedy music, is that because you were doing music, you could either go to comedy open mics or music open mics. So you kind of got double the performance time if you played it that way.
Yeah, it definitely helped, and because there were some cafes in LA that I would go to the music nights, and then there were some cafes that just had open stage, any kind of performing, and so it'd be like poets and musicians and some performance artists and comics. And in LA at the time, well, I'm sure it's the same now, but there were just so many comedians at the open mics that I think the audience responded well to the music, because if you see like 12 people all doing 4 minutes of new untested comedy, it's like sometimes just having some music in there in the middle of it is a nice break and a relief and just a change of pace. So yeah, it definitely helped me sort of establish myself as a performer, because I could perform more like you're saying, and also when I would perform in a comedy room, it was easier to remember who I was. It's like, oh, that's the guy who plays guitar, instead of that's one of the 25 dudes who just went up and did 3 minutes,
Right. How long did you do stand-up before you started, exploring colleges and performing at colleges?
Let's see. I think I did my first college gig about 4 years after I got out of college myself, or 3 years. So I did a few years of open micing in college. By the time I graduated, I was getting very lowly paid gigs around LA. And then after I graduated, I moved back to Chicago because that's where my band was, and that was going to be my serious post-college artistic endeavor, was the band. So I moved back to college and didn't do stand-up or any kind of comedy for about a year. And then as the band was sort of foundering, I guess, is that the right word? Foundering, not
Sure.
Going anywhere. I decided to get back into comedy and started getting gigs at the clubs, and eventually got hooked up with a college agent. But that took a few years, because for a college gig, when you're performing by yourself, you have to do a full hour of material. So it takes a while to build up enough tested good, a good solid hour of material that's, worth people paying you for. So yeah, it definitely was a few years.
Yeah. And I, maybe you can talk to this too. I mean, cause I did colleges for a while, but you're getting hooked up with like NACA or APCA, which are the college booking organizations. I found that it really takes a couple years to figure out what kind of set you can do at one of those showcase events in order to get bookings. Did you find the same thing?
Yeah, those showcases are, a weird, well, not weird, but they're just, they're a kind of performance unto themselves. Yeah, because it's a 20-minute showcase. And so, for the people listening that might not be aware of them, but basically, yeah, they're for a region in the country, say like 7 or 8 states worth. All the student activities people from this region, from all the colleges in this region, go to this convention. It's a weekend long. There's maybe 4 showcases a day, and that showcase will have an MC, a band, a singer-songwriter, maybe a poet, and then a comedian. And you get 20 minutes, and if you do well and the crowd likes you, they will come to your booth afterwards. It's a convention, so all the agencies have their booths, and they come to your booth, and if they like you, they'll inquire about bringing you to their school. And just getting just getting selected to perform at one of those conventions is really difficult because hundreds of comedians apply and there's only a certain amount of slots for comedy. So you have to send in a video. And for me, that's been the hardest part, or that was the hardest part about getting in and staying in, was just getting selected to perform at one of those showcases, because they get so many videos. They literally, the first round of judging who gets in, the first selection round, they only watch a minute of that video. So just trying to figure out what minute is going to entertain a room full of 19 and 20-year-olds who have just sat through, maybe 50 other videos before yours is the part that just is, you really can outthink yourself, So that, for me, that's the most frustrating thing, is getting that like 1 minute, 3 minute tape. And then when they do select you, you have to put together a good 20-minute showcase that somehow sets you apart, but also appeals to that specific market, because the college market is really interesting in that everyone in the audience is between like 18 and 24, and at no other show are you really performing for such a small sliver of an age group. It's interesting how quickly references can change, from, college students, freshmen now were born in 1998, 1999. So
Right.
you have to figure out what references do they get? What reference will they just not understand at all? It's an interesting market.
And one thing I always, because you and I talked about doing college shows, and I always loved that this was sort of your mindset, was you would, if you had like sort of a nooner show, maybe in a dining hall.
The noon shows are great.
Yeah. But like you always, I remember you said like, oh, you would say like, okay, this is going to be a horrible show. Not you, but just the
experience, the environment.
Experience, yeah, because you're performing in a packed dining hall while people are having lunch, and at least for me, when I did a couple of those, it was like you're over in one corner, and it's almost like you're more of an annoyance than a show.
Yeah.
People are like, we're just trying to talk, but you always said like, okay, I'm going to set this money aside to do something with it, because I have to perform this show that I may not necessarily want to perform.
Yeah, well, it was for the times that those shows were very challenging. Some of them, I got to the point where if you get 20 people out of a room full of 200 listening to your show, then that's at a noon show at a community college in the cafeteria. That's a successful show. In no other world is that considered a success when you only have like 10% of the people in the room listening to you. But yeah, and sometimes it's just, you're on stage and you have that, you have those thoughts like, why am I even here performing? And it was one of those games I would play with myself to get myself through. It's like, all right, the money for this show is going to be my fun money for the year. So all the other shows, that money goes to rent and all the, fundamental stuff that you have to pay. But all right, the money for this particular show, I'm gonna take a trip to it. I remember once I came out to California, and instead of renting a regular boring rent-a-car, I rented a convertible Pontiac Firebird, I think is what it was. Right. It was ridiculous, and it was like it was for a week, and so it was like $300 more than the rental itself, which is something I would never spend money on. But it was one of those things. It's like, oh man, that University of Louisville show was so tough to get through, and so all right, that money from that particular show is going to this convertible, so when I'm driving down the PCH with the sun shining on my face, it's like, all right, thank you, University of Louisville, you didn't listen to a word I said, but you got me this cool ride.
Right. You did colleges.
Yes.
You also did the road a lot, right? Yeah, performing clubs and stuff.
Yeah, when I first started, I did a lot of the smaller clubs in the Midwest, and then once I started getting in the colleges, I didn't do as many clubs, because the colleges, the gigs would pay pretty well, and you do like one night here, one night there, so the schedule was always I was always scattered about the country. But I did do some clubs when I started. My first road gig ever was in Peoria, Illinois.
And how'd that go?
It was fun. I was opening for a headliner, a Chicago-based headliner who needed a middle act, which is when you do like the 25-minute set between the MC and the headliner. And it was a perfect sort of introduction to the road, because I was traveling with someone I knew. He knew the club, so he introduced me to those guys. And and it was a longer set than I was used to doing at the time, because I was performing mostly in the city, doing like 10, 15-minute sets. So it was good to do like a little bit of a longer set. And it was interesting to just be out of the city, doing an overnight gig. So yeah, it was really fun.
And I mean, you did a lot of shows and you're still doing shows. But I know one of probably the highlights was that you got to open for George Carlin. And
I did, yeah.
How did that come about?
Well, that came about sort of indirectly through the Pachelbel rant video that his manager's granddaughter was college age at the time, and she saw it and liked it. And Carlin's regular opening act for like 20 years, for a long time, is I think I got the name right. It's Dennis Blair. Do you know who that is?
The name is familiar, but I'm horrible with names. So
he's also a guitar playing comedian, and he had been Carlin's regular opening act for a long, long time. So I think that's why the granddaughter suggested to her grandfather, who was Carlin's manager, this guy named Jerry, said, "Oh, here's another guitar playing comedian who's pretty good. If if the regular guy can't do it, maybe he could fill in some dates." So then they got in touch with my college agent at the time and set up talked about it. And I didn't know for sure if it was really going to happen. They set up a gig like 4 months in advance. It was going to be in November, and this was the summer. But it ended up happening, and they liked me enough to, I think I did about 12 shows with him overall. It was on his last tour. So unfortunately, he passed away in May or June of 2008. So that was the year I started doing shows with him at the end of 2007. I had shows booked throughout the rest of that year that didn't happen. But yeah, but it came about through kind of a random, being found online sort of.
Yeah. Well, and did you have any interaction with him while on the road?
Oh, yeah. I met him, the first show I met him, he came and introduced himself to me backstage, and we chatted a bit. And then at some of the shows, there were a couple of the shows we did 2 shows at the same venue, so I'd hang out in between between the show. And usually he would ask me after I came off stage what I thought of the crowd or how they were. But yeah, he was, didn't, hang out and, usually after the shows, he would go straight to the hotel or back to, even the shows on the East Coast, he would basically fly back to New York and stay in New York and then fly to the next gig. But we definitely talked a bit. He even, after one of the shows, he was talking about a piece of jazz music. He was a big jazz music fan, and he was talking about a piece that he thought I would like. It was a jazz bass piece that had a monologue associated with it, so sort of like a comedy monologue over a jazz bass piece. And at one of the shows, he's like, "Oh, I think you'd like it. Have you ever heard of it?" And then I said, "No." He's like, "Yeah, your Pachelbel bit reminds me a little bit of it. Give me your address. I'll burn you a copy." So sure enough, a week later, I got a CD in the mail with a sticky on it that said "From George Carlin," and it was this really cool jazz bass monologue I think it's called Failure or Bang on a Can, or like maybe Bang on the Can is the album, and the piece is called Failure. But it was really interesting. And yeah, he actually sent it to me because he thought I'd dig it, because he thought it'd be in my, sort of my sense of humor. I thought that was really sweet.
Yeah. Were you a Carlin fan before you opened for him?
Oh, yeah. When I was a kid, I remember hearing the baseball football bit on Dr. Demento way back when.
Right.
And I knew that bit so well, I could recite it backwards and forwards. And yeah, I saw, a couple of his concerts over the years. Yeah, definitely was. To me, growing up, he was just such an established icon of the comedy world. It's like, it was almost like you don't even think of becoming a Carlin fan, because to me, he was just like there, or not like there, but he's just, was so well established for as long as I can remember,
Yeah.
But definitely, I definitely, looked up to him and, liked his stuff from as far back as I can remember.
Well, you touched on it briefly at the beginning of this story, but you have had you've sort of taken your comedy and music that you perform in the clubs and at colleges and stuff, and you've made a really great transition to like YouTube and doing YouTube videos. And I can think of the Pachelbel rant and the band candy, if I'm saying the name.
Oh yeah,
right.
Pushing Band Candy.
Pushing Band Candy. Like, those did really well online, and I don't know necessarily, if you would. I think they're viral. To me, they're viral because they're more hits than I could ever possibly dream of getting. But yeah, can you talk about that, like shooting your stuff now for YouTube? Yeah, well, the Pachelbel thing, that definitely was. I posted that in the early YouTube era, I guess. I think I put it up in 2006, so it's going on 10 years now. But yeah, definitely that one started getting passed around. So that was the first time I had any sort of
experience with something like that, with something online that could really take on a life of its own. Because I still meet people who might not even remember my name or recognize my name when they come to the show, but when I do that bit, they're like, "Oh my gosh, I saw that bit. Someone emailed me that clip," and a lot of music people would send it to each other. So, but that was just, that was so long ago. That was like me trying to just capture a live thing and put it online. Whereas now, YouTube is sort of more channel oriented and putting up a lot of, putting up sort of a regular, like I'm doing a series this year called 52 Sellout, which I'm trying to do like a regular thing. Because the problem when I was trying to do live stuff, and I'm sure you can relate, like whenever you try to get a good live videotape of especially with comedy, it's just there's so many variables. The lighting can be bad, or if the audience isn't mic'd well, like you could be on stage and having a great set, but the laughter doesn't come through, so the video looks really weird, and you're just standing on stage waiting for the audience to stop, laughing and applauding, and it just looks like you're standing there bombing.
Yeah.
So I was really frustrated. Yeah, I found it frustrating to try to get good live video online. So I kind of like the new, well, not new, but I kind of like trying to do videos specifically for the web, and I'm doing shorter ones now. Like this series that I'm doing now is all fake commercials, so they're all like 30 seconds, a minute, 2 minutes long. I really like being able to just put stuff out there on a regular basis. It definitely helps to just sort of keep the creative momentum going, and it's nice to just be able to post something, have an idea, and when you work with other people, or if you're working for a channel, or if you're working for a client, things go through so many steps, and this client doesn't like this word, or this channel doesn't want to do this kind of comedy. It's not on their brand. When you put up stuff yourself, it's just, I think it's funny, so I'm putting it up, and I kind of like that about it.
Well, and what I really love about, and especially these 52 Sellout videos and stuff you've done before, is you really go all out on the production.
I try to.
Just like a green screen and all that kind of stuff. Is that how big a part of it of how big a part of it is that production value?
Well, I'm glad you like it, because sometimes that's the hard part to get together. I feel like I'm good at getting good music production together. I have a home studio, a little Pro Tools set up here in the apartment. But yeah, all the green screen stuff I shoot in the apartment too. But the tools are so much better than they ever used to be. Like just being able to chroma key something that I shoot in my apartment. It's like, over the years I've learned how to light it better, so you don't get any shadows on the green screen. That's really the killer, is when you got a shadow on the green screen, then it doesn't key out very well.
Yeah.
But I enjoy doing it. Some weeks I realize I bit off a lot more than I can chew. And there's sometimes, like the one I just did last week, I had this great choral music, and I would have loved to have like 6 or 8 friends get together and do like this chorus shot, but I didn't have time, and I don't know enough people that can just come over to my house on like a half hour's notice and pretend to be in a chorus for a song. So I just shot myself 6 different times and put it together, and it ended up looking kind of weird in its own right, so I didn't mind it, but it was sort of just done out of necessity because I couldn't round up enough people. But I do like it, but some weeks. And the thing about the weekly project is I hope that people out there, when they watch it, they realize that I'm doing this all in a week. So I try to cut myself some slack. I realize it can't be perfect. And if I just want to get something up every week, the thing I finish is going to be better than something I don't finish, So even if it's not finished perfectly, it's going to turn out better than nothing. So I try to keep that attitude. And this weekly project has definitely helped me sort of make decisions quicker and not overthink some things that you can just get distracted on some minutia sometimes when you're working on a project, and some projects require that level of detail. But yeah, weekly spoof commercials I don't think are the one.
Yeah, well, sometimes you can get hung up on a detail and then never release the thing because you're just hung up on that one detail, and this is like, nope, you got to put out this video this week.
Yeah, and even I had I had a week where I was on the road for the whole week. I was back home. I was actually doing Fump Fest back in Chicago. So I was hanging out with the family, and I realized like, oh, I don't have a video for this week. So I shot one on my iPad and just edited it in my iMovie for the iPad. And I did a little opening introduction saying, some weeks aren't going to be that high tech because it's like I'm at my sister's house in Illinois, and I think that can be a plus though. I think people, doesn't have to be perfect, and people will respond to the fact that it's just sort of an honest, it's an honest attempt to keep things going, and it's a little more personal too, I think. So yeah, it's been a really good, it's been good training and not totally freaking out. And there's been weeks where I was like, oh, if I had just 3 more days, I could, make this look so much slicker. But then I have to keep reminding myself that's not the point of this project. This is not supposed to be super slick production, or at least it doesn't have to be perfect.
Right. Well, as we wrap up here, if people want to check out 52 Sellout or just find you online, where can they go?
The best place is my website, robprocks.com. If you don't think I rock, you can just say robprocs.com. And all my videos are posted there, and then it has links to my Facebook and links to Twitter and my YouTube channel and everything. And that's the nexus of the Rob P. Online headquarters empire extravaganza.
Well, Rob, I think you rock, and thank you so much
Thank you.
for being on the show today. I really appreciate it.
Oh, thanks for having me. It's good catching up with you. Good luck with the rest of the episodes.
Thank you. Rob Paravonian is a comedy musician and songwriter, and you can find out more about all his different projects at robprocks.com. 15 Minutes with On the GrantCast is a production of Saturday Morning Media and made possible by the Saturday Morning Media Patreon patrons who've gone to patreon.com/Saturday Morning Media and set up a monthly donation for as little as $1 a month. Huge thanks to Shay Stewart, Merle Lafferty, Jeff Peterson, Dale Gadania, Steven Staver, Jackie Klimo, Melissa Crawford, Chuck, Matthew Wayne Selznick, Dave Slusher of the Evil Genius Chronicles, Mike Coughlin, Dorothy Baciocco, John D., Kathy Crawford, Brian Greer, Carrie Whitney, Chuck Tomasi, Chris Foster, Stephen Ing, Clinton of ComedyForecast.com, Vicky DeVries, Mike Wabshall, Twitter user Butzengear, a.k.a. Wildcat, Eve Cunning, Mike Hamilton, Gaston Moreno, and Reed Loveland. If you'd like to support this show and the other fun content from Saturday Morning Media, become a patron. Head on over to patreon.com/Saturday Morning Media and set up your monthly donation today. You can also tell a friend about the show or leave the show a review on iTunes. And if you have feedback about the show, you can send it to me directly at grant@throwingtoasters.com or get in touch via Twitter, where my username is ToasterBoy. Thanks for tuning in. I'll talk to you next time. The GrantCast is copyright 2016 Saturday Morning Media, Grant Baciocco executive producer, all rights reserved. www.SaturdayMorningMedia.com. You've been listening to Saturday Morning Media. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.